Hi guys, Squire here. This is my post-patch review and benchmark of Far Cry Primal, which was released back in February on consoles and March on PC. When it first came out, it garnered quite mixed reviews from critics and gamers alike. On Metacritic, it currently sits at 74 on PC and has a horrifically low 4.6 user score. I think the low score is mainly due to performance issues at launch. However, this was also due to a lot of people accusing the game of essentially being a reskinned Far Cry 4. So before we get into my thoughts, let's have a quick look at the options. Now, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail here, but I'll just give a quick run through of what's in the options and the settings that I have the game on. So gameplay wise, there are quite a lot of different settings here. You can change things like aim assist, melee assist, you can do toggle your weapon aim, crouch and so on, and there are also little things, and this is one I really appreciated, was the ability to turn off search animations. This also goes for the skinning as well. Considering how much stuff you have to collect in this game, it was quite nice to be able to just go up, push a button and be done with it instead of watching an animation. Now onto the interface, I have to give props to EVGA. They have done quite a good job here in terms of making nearly every element to the HUD customizable. You can turn off pretty much everything if you like. I'd had a lot of the options turned off just to add a bit of immersion, but you can take one step further and remove pretty much anything in the game. Onto the keyboard and mouse, some fairly standard settings here. Nice that you can turn off the mouse acceleration or adjust the value of it, and also customize your controls fully. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but you'd be amazed how many games don't actually come out with this feature. Onto the gamepad settings, fairly standard stuff here. There are a few preset controls, and you can also adjust the look sensitivity, which is quite a nice feature and not something you often see in games. For the visuals, I have it set to 1440p at 144 Hz. I have VSync turned off because I'm on a G-Sync monitor. There was also a HD texture pack released recently, which I have downloaded and have enabled. There is also an option in here for multi-monitor HUD, so if you do have more than one monitor, it does support that natively. For the quality settings, everything is set to the highest. The only thing that I've turned off is motion blur. Pretty decent amount of settings in here, although it is a shame that the game only has FXAA and doesn't have any other form of anti-aliasing. I do not really like FXAA, I find it a little bit blurry, and it would have been nice to have some other options in there like SMAA. In the color settings, pretty standard stuff. Brightness, contrast and gamma, and in the advanced settings you can change your VSync mode from normal to sparse, and you can adjust your field of view. The audio options are very simple. You have the master volume and you can adjust the music on or off, and the game does have a benchmark feature. Now, before I even talk about the gameplay or performance, one thing you'll probably notice is that the game looks pretty damn stunning. There were quite a number of times in Primal where I'd just have to stop what I was doing and admire the view, which isn't the smartest move given that nearly every creature in the game is out to kill you. As far as performance goes, on my setup, which is an i7-4790K at 4.7 GHz and two EVGA 980ti classified editions, I could run very smoothly on max settings at 1440p, although the frame rate did occasionally drop below 60 as the GPU usage seems to be a bit all over the place. If I switch to single card mode, you can see that the game struggles to maintain a solid 60 frames per second at 1440p, even with the card running at 100% usage. Weirdly, even if I drop the resolution down to 1080p, the game still doesn't maintain a solid 60 frames per second due to the GPU usage dropping. Now in terms of 4K performance, this is actually where Far Cry Primal shines, as both cards run at a solid 99% usage and the frame rate is mostly 60 frames per second with occasional drops here and there. So about the game itself, it's set in 10,000 BC and you play as a chap called Takar, who after getting brutally attacked by a saber-toothed tiger begins his search for disbanded members of his EVGA tribe. As with previous games, you'll meet a number of different weird and wonderful characters who will help you upgrade your character, weapons, and provide missions for the single-player campaign. As with previous Far Cry titles, there are also a number of simple side missions and collectibles which grant you XP. By completing the side missions for your EVGA tribe, you also build up the population of your village, which allows you to build better upgrades and in turn grant you better gear. So what did I think of the game? Well, if I had to summarise in one sentence, I'd say that Far Cry Primal is very Far Cry. And what I mean by this is that despite having about as far a departure as you can from the setting of previous games, it still very much feels like you're playing Far Cry 3 or 4. The interface is the same, especially in terms of the HUD. To upgrade a lot of your gear, you have to hunt and kill endless amounts of animals to skin them, and also collect natural resources like wood, clay, etc. for making ammo and also upgrading your gear and village. On top of the standard side missions, which only have a few different variables like escort, hunt, and so on, you can also look for camps which unlock fast travel points. Additionally, you can assault enemy encampments, which unlocks additional fast travel points, plus gains you XP and people to join your tribe. The one thing, aside from the setting, that really separates this from previous games is the ability to tame animals. Now, to accomplish this, when there is an animal nearby that you have yet to tame, you throw a piece of bait, the animal wanders over to it, and then you go up to them and hold down a button. After that, you can summon the animal on demand, and they each have their own abilities. For example, the wolf will stop other animals attacking you, and the jaguar can stealth kill enemies. You can also ride some of these creatures as well, and I have to say, riding on the back of a saber-toothed tiger over the gorgeous terrain is unbelievably satisfying. There is also the ability to use an owl to survey an area before you attack. The owl can not only mark targets but also attack enemies and drop bombs. One of my biggest gripes that I have with Far Cry Primal is really around repetition. There are so many of the exact same tasks which you have to complete endless amounts of times. I constantly found myself picking up resources as I went through the game, knowing that I need them later on for upgrading or for ammo, and after an hour or so it really starts to feel like a chore. Now, you can argue that you don't need to do a lot of the side missions, but if you want to get the most out of the game and get the best abilities and weapons, you do have to complete a lot of this busy work. The main problem with the actual side missions themselves is that there's no real story to them, or interesting characters that you meet along the way. It's just go here, kill these animals, or kill these enemies, or escort people. It's just not that interesting or fun. In Far Cry 4 this wasn't quite as annoying, as there was a huge array of weapons, different ways to approach situations, vehicles and so on, whereas in Primal, and this is my second major gripe, the combat is painfully simple and dull. There is a much heavier reliance on melee here, and it's so basic I genuinely had to go online and see if there was anything I was missing. You can't dodge or block or counter, and you only have two different attacks, strong and weak. Most of the time you just run up to enemies and keep hitting the attack button until they go down. I ended up just using the bow and arrow or throwing the spear, as at least that involves some semblance of skill. You can also throw weapons like clubs, shards or use grenade type weapons as well, but it's still an incredibly simple system and it's downright lazy. If the game had interesting side quests and things to do, then that might make up for it, but it doesn't. You're just doing the same thing over and over again. Now, by comparison, if you look at something like The Witcher 3, and I know that's an entirely different genre, but it's still an open world game. Now, in Witcher 3, side missions actually have a story. They have interesting characters, and some can have a knock-on effect later on. I found myself intentionally looking for side quests to do in that game because they were so interesting and you never knew what to expect. Now, why can't they take this approach with something like Far Cry? It's just lazy. And that's really my overall view on the game. The visuals are great, the performance and options customization is fantastic, but the game just lacks heart. It feels so by the numbers. The main characters you meet in the game are quite interesting, and the single player campaign does have some great moments, even if a lot of them are when you don't have control over the character in cutscenes, but everything else about the game just feels lazy and a bit half-assed. For every good idea the game implements, it brings another issue. For example, I like the fact that nearly every creature in the game is out to get you, and at the start you do feel incredibly vulnerable, especially at night when more animals are out to hunt, but after a while it just gets tedious because the animals constantly spawn around you, and after you get some upgrades you take them down so easily that it just starts to become another chore. And this leads me on to my summary. Although I did enjoy a lot of my time in Far Cry Primal, I feel like they really need to go back to the drawing board with the franchise and try something new, especially around the side missions and activities. They seem to be taking the same approach with Assassin's Creed, so hopefully they'll follow suit with this franchise too. If you're a huge fan of the series, you will likely get some enjoyment out of the game, but if you were starting to feel a bit of franchise fatigue in the last one, this isn't likely to sway you. Overall, I'd say the games are not too shabby, 3 out of 5. There are some good ideas, especially around the animal companions, and the main campaign was entertaining. Also, the setting itself was quite a brave move by EVGA, but they really need to take the core gameplay mechanics and mission structure back to the drawing board. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. This is my first attempt at doing one, so do be gentle with your comments. It was a recent decision of mine to invest in starting to build this channel, so there will be a lot more content to come. I'm going to be doing more reviews, benchmarks of not just new games but older titles that have been patched. I'm also looking at starting a series of videos that look at underrated games and also those that I've come across which are just so bad it's almost funny. If you like this review, please do let me know with a like and subscribe, or a dislike if you thought it was crap. Thanks for watching.